Welcome to the Visionaries Only podcast presented by Energy 11 and hosted by me, Jay Thomas. This is episode 9 with activist, poet, athlete, and nonprofit director Alesha Smith. This was a very candid and honest conversation around nonprofit and activism, particularly the areas we'd love to see improvement. We go into what drives people's inaction and how Alesha inspires change from within the community. Most notably, she tells the story of how she helped get a street named after a woman who lost her life to gun violence in her hometown of Athens, Georgia. We also touch on her story of returning to full contact sports after back surgery that could have left her paralyzed. This is the story of a woman balancing sports, activism, and spirituality while keeping her authentic Southern roots at the forefront. This is visionary Alesha Smith. I recently started thinking about what story do I want to tell about the visionaries that I have on the show. And I had an idea of what I wanted to tell about you. So that's how I kind of crafted the questions for this. So I'm going to start with the question that I really want to know about you and really every visionary that comes on this show here on out. It's what is it about the work that you do now, which is obviously nonprofit work. What is it about that work that gets you out of bed every day to do it?
I think it's love. Nonprofit work is not something you can just do for a check. Definitely not. You gotta love the work, and I think more specifically, you gotta love the people that you're working for and with. So what gets me out of the bed in the morning are the babies, our young people. What gets me out of bed in the morning is the community that literally working with. What gets me out of the bed in the morning is little Alesha, who will be super proud of like where I'm at right now, who couldn't even imagine a career that puts social justice and sports together. Like that's the thing that gets me out of bed.
When we first met at the nonprofit we were working at together, I'll admit that I was a little skeptical about the decision that you made to ensure that whatever you did in the social justice space had sports in it. I was like, now I think that could happen, but I'm trying to see the path forward. But that makes you the visionary, right? That's you had the vision and you're seeing it through working as a director now at PeacePlayers. And you refer to them as the babies, which is the funniest thing because you've been referring to them as the babies since I've known you. And now that you're like 30 in the mind, you're not even 30 yet, but in your mind, you in your 30s.
30.
Calling these high schoolers that are not much, you're not much older than babies.
Yeah.
Specifically, I'm glad you mentioned those babies because there was a time where you did something that I was incredibly shocked by, and you told me about it randomly, and I don't know if you remember this, and I want you to talk about this. I want you to tell this story yourself. So can you talk about that time that those boys were about to fight in the park? You remember they were about to fight in the park, and you stepped in to stop them. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
This was recent?
No, this was some years back. There was an argument going on in the park, and you stopped and was like, "Come on!" Like you gave him the whole pep talk.
Let me see if this is the story that I'm thinking of, because I don't even remember telling you this. In Fort Greene. I typically like to get my walk on.
Okay.
And chill. So Fort Greene is my spot. So if y'all see me in Fort Greene, say what's up. But don't be weird. Anyway, so I was walking, and out of nowhere, like these group of dudes or two guys just started fighting in Fort Greene, gentrified Fort Greene. This isn't even black Fort Greene. These two black young people were fighting, and it's white women with children walking by. It's all of this thing, and it's just like, yo, what are we doing? Why right now? And it seemed to be like they were fighting over a young lady.
It's usually the case.
Yeah, so I'm walking by, and parts of me is like, Alesha, this is New York City, mind your business. And I'm good with, like, New York City has taught me how to mind my business. But there's other parts that tug on me like, come, step in, please. So I go over there as they're, like, fighting and, like, bear hugging and stuff. Like, they were really fighting. And I'm like, y'all, come on. Like, what are we doing right now? What are we doing? What are y'all doing? And immediately they stopped. And it had me shook because I thought that they were like, shut up, expletive, like curse me out. Yeah. But they didn't. Like, they immediately like stopped and pulled themselves together. And then like, well, nah, but they did this. And it's like, nah, y'all better than this. Come on. And they straightened up. They got their stuff. They said whatever they had to say. The argument didn't exactly stop, but they walked away. And I think sometimes we have to be reminded of who we are. And you are one that often reminds me of who I am, even in the moments where you are not being your best self. And I know I've had those moments where I was upset with somebody and I wasn't my best self. So to have somebody, who doesn't know you, like, yo, what are we doing right now? Like, in the park, for real? And call it out. So I think that was the story you were talking about? Exactly. Okay. Because there was a number of times where in New York City I stepped in when I don't know if I should have.
I brought that story up because to me, like, that's in essence who you are, right? Mm. You're the person that in a group of people that are saying, that might just look at that situation and be like, what are they doing? God, I hate when we do this. Like, this looks so bad, right? And then keep it pushing. Mm-hmm. In a group of those people, you are the one that makes the step to walk over there, put yourself in a little bit of danger because New York is the capital of minding your business.
Absolutely.
You decided to walk over there. And I'm curious if you, in a world full of people that are talkers and not doers, especially when it comes to, I'll just use like sort of a blanket term of activism. What do you think it is about you that compels you to take the step further, putting yourself sometimes in the line of fire?
I think it does fall back on that piece of like love. I love folks and my faith. Like, I wouldn't exactly call myself super, super religious, but I know God. We talk all the time. Right. And the Jesus that I know is revolutionary. And he turns stuff over. He hit, like, that's the kind of person that I follow, and that's the kind of person that I am. So when I see things, as afraid as I am to do it, I step anyway. And I think that's a lesson for us all. Like, we cannot wait for somebody else to create a better world. It's gonna be on all of us to do that. So I want to at least do my little part in that piece.
Speaking of you doing your part, I have to talk on one of the most impressive things I think you've done with your activism career. Back in Athens, 2019.
Athens, Georgia, the classic city.
The classic city.
Classic.
Still not as famous as Athens,
oh my
Greece.
God, 706. Come on, stop. It's okay. I love Athens.
I know you do. You put Athens on the map.
Ooh.
How does that feel?
That's huge. Okay, I don't know if I put Athens on the map, but I'm trying to continuously make Athens look great.
Well, you did with this back in 2019. Unfortunate gun violence. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Tell me if I am. Oriel. Mm-hmm. Oriel Cathaway, aka Thumpa. Mm-hmm. She was murdered while she was 4 months pregnant. I've read the article on it, and it's unfortunate to hear to read those types of things because it's commonplace at this point.
Yeah,
you kind of just accept that this is just how the world is.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it about that scenario that moved you to organize the community to get a street named after her?
Yeah. So I remember seeing it like in 2019 hit my Facebook timeline. I was, when I want to check on family, I'll go to Facebook. IG and Twitter is different, but family, you see all the family stuff or the local community stuff on Facebook. And I remember in 2019 when it happened, like everybody was posting about it. And Thumper was just, so I didn't exactly, she wasn't a friend of mine personally. I went, she was younger than me. So her sister went to school with me in high school. But just a great human being. And I remember seeing all of these posts of love. But then something different that I typically don't see is that folks were calling for stopping the violence. Like, we got to do better. Language we don't typically see. and action started to come from it. I know they did like a gun buyback. But people were really, really upset because she was just such an amazing person, just great to everybody. And it was just unfortunate circumstance. So I saw that 2019. I remember posting something about Nipsey. And because literally, I want to say maybe some months before Nipsey passed, and everybody, when Nipsey passed, was saying we need to be, or how great Nipsey was, and Nipsey embodied like community, and us praising Nipsey is like, yo, we could do that too. Like, why can't we galvanize our own community? Why can't we love on our own community? Why can't we pour back into our community? So that was 2019. I made that post. I said what I had to say about community and making sure that, we got to do better. And it's not just, the youth of this. It's like, yo, they got it from somewhere. So I came back home 2020 during the pandemic and was working virtually. And I saw on one of my timelines, I think it was a story, rapper Catch One Baldy, shout out to Catch One. He posted on his story that the community like makeshift shine. So the community made up like a sign in the neighborhood for Thumper, and the authorities took it down. And he was upset about it, and the community was upset about it. So I messaged him and was like, I'll work with you to figure out how we can get it up. And he was like, bet. I said, all I need you to do is you help galvanize the community folks, because you're good on the grounds. I got the politics part. And so we collaborated in that way. We got over 1,000 people to sign a petition to get Thumper's name up. Went to community board meetings, went to all of these meetings to get politicians to make it happen. And it just showcased what happens when we work together and we rally behind something. So I'm grateful for it. And I cannot take all the credit. It was so many other people that helped to do it. But again, it showed me the power in community and working together for a common cause.
We're all in our little bubbles, right? We have a lot going on in our lives. We're all the main characters in our own stories.
Yeah.
And from your perspective, man, I'm not saying I have an entire Rolodex of activists from which I pull and can start to and ask questions about how they do this. And I'd love to have more activists on the podcast at some point. But what I find most compelling about the best activists, they're the ones that can galvanize a group of people around a particular cause and get stuff like that done. That's why it was so impressive. It's probably not as impressive if it was just you by yourself putting up a sign and then you got it to stay up there. Mm-hmm. But you got over 1,000 people to actually sign this petition, and it was a group effort to get this done. What have you learned in your years of activism, or like some of the keys to galvanizing a group of people around a cause, knowing good and damn well they got so much other stuff going on in their life?
I think it's speaking with community, but speaking the language of community. And when you talk about politics, when you talk about community board, councilmen, all of that stuff, folks are off top don't want to have any dealings with it. But when you break down the situations of who these people are, how they can help your community, and bringing it into a language that speaks to them, that's when folks will actually act. So when we are literally talking about how this affects you, mm-hmm. then they'll start moving. Yeah. And I mean, that can be problematic, but mm-hmm. also a good thing. But I think again, it's breaking down issues and making sure the community sees that these are the issues that affect you every day. And maybe you don't have the verbiage or the language to know that, right. But that's why I'm here. And I think that's what happens when you can speak the language of community to community, and then also not discount their thoughts, because oftentimes folks come up in here and they talk the talk, they take away from folks, and then are surprised when they don't want to be, or when community doesn't trust them. Right. So I think coming in, understanding that folks do have opinions and thoughts and right. are brilliant in their own right, but how do you come together to bring that? I think again, this breaking down and speaking the language of community, but then also leading with and not leading for, right. And being that person. So super collaborative.
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious that you know what you're doing.
Oh,
It's obvious.
I mean, I'm chilling.
You know, I don't know. I think we might have talked about this before over the phone at some point some years ago, but there's a concept I was introduced to by someone that we used to work with sort of tangentially at the nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And he introduced this idea of built-in obsolescence. Do you remember I told you about that? Mm-mm. So built-in obsolescence, it's mostly used in the private sector. So it's kind of like the concept of like building something that doesn't last too long. Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden my iPhone starts malfunctioning as soon as the new one's about to come out. Mm-hmm. So it has a built-in obsolescence. And I came into nonprofit thinking that nonprofits, I didn't have the verbiage, but I thought nonprofits existed to solve a problem so that they wouldn't have to exist anymore. Mm.
That's how they should operate. Yeah.
Right. Like, and this is not, I'm not trying to be controversial here in any way. At me if you think if you're really upset about it, you can at me. But the fact that there is an entire subsection of the healthcare system dedicated to cancer, right? And I believe the cure to cancer is more about prevention of cancer, right? Of like eating the right things and stuff like that. Does it cure all cancer? No, but I think that's the main key. It's the stuff that we're eating and the stuff we're putting into our bodies, even by way of like Johnson & Johnson products. I don't mess with Johnson & Johnson at all. They're evil in my estimation. They will never be a sponsor of this show.
Talk it.
But more importantly, like healthcare is I kind of naively came into nonprofit the way that I thought healthcare was supposed to operate, to eradicate certain diseases and to not have to deal with the problem anymore. But that isn't profitable. Mm-hmm. Because imagine if you wanted to work at a nonprofit for 20 years, you probably, if you had built-in obsolescence, you'd have to say, I'm going to work at this nonprofit until the problem doesn't exist anymore. And when I got to the nonprofit we used to work at, and I saw the inner workings of it, I was like, oh, this is not to solve a problem. This is meant to, this is almost performative on some level. Mm-hmm. Because the problems that you think you want to solve are really, really huge. And I'm curious, like, when did you realize the limitations of nonprofits in that way? Because I realized it maybe in my second of 3 years. Like, it took me a while to really understand that.
Dang, that's a good question.
I thought of it myself.
The first year that I started working at that specific nonprofit that you're just talking on, I was it's more of an intern fellow-ish. And then getting a full-time position, I got a chance to see a bit more. So I would say in that year and a half, I saw a bit more. And I guess maybe one example can be, I got a chance, I was super excited to start writing stories about some of the clients that we worked with. So we had mental health individuals that worked or were in one of our mental health facilities. We had elementary after school programs, women at homeless shelters. So I wanted to write the stories about them and not in a icky way.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that within highlighting.
Yeah. Poor us.
Yes. And I can remember folks in higher positions wanting me to write in that light, and I wasn't going to do it. But being able to go to the specific space that these clients were at and to listen to their stories, oh my gosh, just to listen to their stories and hear about some of the stuff that they've been through within their lives. It was hard to hear and to find some sort of like resilience or find some sort of inspiration. It was easy to find that piece. But to get to write those kind of stories were super important to me and be able to share that with the larger community But I think to hear those stories and to understand that this specific nonprofit isn't going to be able to help you with that. They'll be able to, buy some clothes. Like, we'll be able to get you a new shoe, but not really
paint your facility.
Yeah. We'll take a picture with you and post you on our IG. It wasn't really the work.
Yeah.
And the work is hard. The work don't ask for credit. The work is the work. And it wasn't happening. And it frustrated me to hear you should, write a little bit of this. That's what the funders may want to hear. They might give us more money. But with that more money, what will you do with it? was my thoughts. So I think the more I would write those client stories and to hear these specific stories and how deserving they were of better. Yeah. But to feel like I can't give it to you. All I can give you is, I'm sorry, like love, like that. That's all I can give you, and you need so much more than that. Right. So I think those were those moments when I got the chance to sit one-on-one kind of like this and to write and hear their stories. There's
so many areas that I feel like nonprofit can improve on. And to me, like there's so many blueprints of how you can run an organization efficiently while making like the most progress. And I think when I was working in nonprofit, the thing that used to annoy me is we were obsessed with the wrong stuff. Like if it didn't feel like we were obsessed with quality at all. Like we weren't obsessed with how do we make this experience the best for our clients? Because the funders are going to fund high-performing businesses. Like, that's what they wanted at the end of the day. How could we help these people in the greatest way possible? And then everything else falls into place was my thought process. Yeah. And I didn't get the feeling that everyone was aligned on that. And I'm unapologetic in saying that. It's no disrespect to anybody. And it's not even specific to the nonprofit we worked at. I saw this across the board because we had to work with other nonprofits. I know people that you start building, network with other people in nonprofit. You kind of see some of the similar things. And that's the thing that I wish, if I had one thing that I wish nonprofits would get better at, it is hyper focusing on the people that they serve and letting the funding come after. Like, focus on telling the stories in an authentic, genuine way that humanizes these people and doesn't make them feel like please donate to these poor, desperate people.
Oh my God, it bothers me. I hate it. I hate it. Because to write something like that, it shows that you don't see these people as human beings. You see them as like, it's the charity case. Right. They're the person that you walk by every day that's struggling. Like, you don't care for real. Yeah. And you don't care for real and you're working there. Like, that bothers me. So what I'm super proud of the nonprofit that I'm working at now is that we lead with humanizing folks. We lead with making sure, because they my babies. And I say babies because yes, we have high schools. We also have elementary, middle schoolers. But I say babies because oftentimes these young people don't get to be young people. They don't get to be children. They don't get to be babies. So I'm gonna love on you like you a baby and help you grow. But also I'll definitely say that they're young adults. But I just think that being able to humanize folks and to see yourself within people is what it's all about. And you should not be in a nonprofit space if you don't do that. Like, that's the bare minimum. Yeah. If you can't, if you don't care about the folks that you're working for, what are you there for? Yeah. This is not a space to collect a check because the checks ain't checking. Like, the checks are not like tech or, big corporations. The checks can check, but they not that. So you gotta love the stuff that you're doing because the hustle will hustle. There you go.
You heard it here first. Nonprofit, the checks are not checking.
Okay, wait, you're gonna be fired. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
No, it's fine. No, I get it. I remember. I worked in nonprofit too. And you're right. Listen, they just it's a nonprofit, so they like most of the money that comes into nonprofit is circled back into building the business in terms of funding obviously the staff, and then the services for the clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So people that go to nonprofit, they didn't go there to get rich. That is Absolutely. For sure. They did it because they just genuinely have a calling to do it. Is essentially what we talked about, like actually humanizing clients. Is that the area that you would say you'd love to see nonprofit get better at? Like what's like, you spent a lot longer in nonprofit than me. Like outside of just like maybe the humanizing stuff we just talked about, like what's like a tactical, maybe more like concrete way you think nonprofits can get better at doing?
Yeah, I think that is one. I think the other is, it bothers me that nonprofits compete with each other.
Ooh,
like,
okay.
Why are we going head to head? Like, and whether it's to get the most clients, whether it's to get the most clout on social media, like it's wild to me. And nonprofits cannot, or one nonprofit definitely, but nonprofits in general cannot do it alone. So collaboration is something that I'm super big on. Like, how can I work with you? How can maybe there's a nonprofit that does tech and can help our youth with tech. I could pass my young person off to you. Like, how do we work collaboratively and not compete? Because we're all trying to solve this problem. So how do we do it together? And I think a lot of times organizations miss the mark. There are some that are doing well, and I think that's the answer. Like, how do we work collaboratively to do it, as opposed to I'm in my silo, you're in your silo, give me my clout, give me my funders, give me my social media, like all of that. I think we're doing ourselves in the world a disservice.
That's a great point. And it's one that I think I've actually heard you say before. Like, why are we doing the same thing as like Good Shepherd Services, Canva? Like, we doing the same stuff as all these other organizations. And we used to actually have conversations like, we're all bidding for the same location. It's like, excuse my language, who gives a shit? Like, who gives a shit? Like, this is with these people, and that's the thing that I learned about nonprofit, and then I'll move on from this. But like, that's the thing I learned about nonprofit is that the nonprofit is just a title. They operate like companies, like regular companies. Mm-hmm. Like, we gotta expand here. We gotta get this location. They play Monopoly just like the big boys. Mm-hmm. Like, so this whole notion that I don't know if there's a notion that nonprofits are actually here to help people, and I think some of them do some incredible work, but I think we have a ways to go. There's a ways to go for us to grow out of the competitive space to the collaborative space. There's like a ways to go. So I think that was a great point. Mm-hmm.
I think it stems off the scarcity mindset. Like, it's not enough. I gotta have, me and mine's gotta have, and it's not enough. But there is, like, there is enough. And when we operate out of the scarcity mindset, this fear-based mindset, we're gonna have the same issues often. So yes to that. And then you also made the point around expanding and growing. That's another beef that I have with nonprofits. Like, I'm good with expansion, but like strategic expansion, not letting funders move you and expanding before you need to, like going deep with the folks that you have and continuing to move from there, because expanding just to expand, that's why nonprofits fail between what is it, 5 or 10 years? 5? I can't remember the statistic, but I think you rushing expansion so much that you are a detriment to the community that you serve.
Right. I wished, one thing I used to say about the nonprofit we worked at, I used to be really maybe annoying about this when I was there. I used to say, I wish we just did like maybe 3 things really good. Like, could we do 3 things really good and not do 13 things kind of okay? Mm-hmm. Like, can we be the go-to for these 3? And I don't think, in my opinion, while I was there, I don't think we got to that point. And it was unfortunate because I thought we had the talent to do it. So switching gears to you, though.
Oh, no.
Back.
Not me.
You've been in nonprofit for a while, and Now you're in a leadership position as a director. Did that surprise you that you're a director? Did I just break news that you're a director? It sounded like
didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Now that you're at this leadership position, and now you've got all your babies, taking care of the babies. How are you making the distinction between nonprofit director Alesha Smith and Alesha Smith, the woman from Athens, Georgia?
Ooh.
How do you make that distinction?
That's another good question.
I
can't stand you. Why would you ask me this? Dang. How do I make that distinction? This might be the wrong answer, but I don't know if there is a distinction.
Oh, go on.
Because Alesha, the girl from Athens, Georgia, is leading PeacePlayers Brooklyn as the director.
Right. And
to do that, I got to be me. I got to do it authentically. I can't change my accent. Like, the kids know they call me Coach Yeehaw. Like, it's the most disrespectful thing ever. They do. They try and disrespect. They say I'm from Texas. I'm like, no. Yes.
Wait a minute. Coach Yeehaw?
Coach Yeehaw.
Bro, can I just say this as a quick aside?
That's crazy.
Of all 50 states, there's no place for cutting ass like New York.
None.
Like Coach Yeehaw, that's incredible.
It's wild.
That's so good.
I almost said get to the line.
Everybody doing suicide.
Exactly.
There. Coach Yeehaw. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
They be cutting up, bro. God.
They do. But no, I literally bring myself into the work, and I think that's what's been helpful because I can't
thinking about Coach Yeehaw. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, because in a director role, if a child calls you Coach Yeehaw,
yes,
and Alesha Smith, the button-up professional director, the response should be, why would this kid call me? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it's hierarchy there.
Right.
But Alesha Smith, the person, is like, yo, I was a child, I joked too. Like, and I'll crack a joke back. Like, I have to bring that to the work that I do. And I think that's because kids are quick to, they know who's authentic, who's not.
Right.
And they will tell you, real recognize real. So that was something that I was nervous about, like bringing my full self to the work and whether folks would like it. I am not the most polished of individuals, but I'm getting to a point where like, that's fine. I don't need to be. Like, I could bring my African-American vernacular to spaces and be myself, whether it's on the court, whether that's in these big rooms with partners. Like, if I can't be myself and speak authentically to who I am, my community, and the folks that I love and care about, then what am I doing it for?
Sounds like there's not like you mentioned, not a distinction, but there's the big umbrella of Alesha Smith, and being a director is a part of it.
Yeah. I think, being a director is definitely a part. I try not to it's not my identity. Yeah. But I get stuck because the passion can sometimes be my identity. Like the passion that I have for young people and community and sports, that kind of bubbles up so it can show itself. But for the most part, I would say my identity is not tied to the title. Actually, not even for the most part. It's not tied to the title. Yeah. I'm going to be Alesha Smith, and it's all I can be.
Talk about it. You kind of hinted at it earlier.
Uh-oh.
But what role do you think spirituality plays in your life at this point?
Ooh, it's huge. Like, it's amazing. I grew up Black and Catholic in Georgia, and typically you do not see Black and Catholic or Black folks that are Catholic, especially in Athens, Georgia. But that was my faith. I went to church. I had, relationship with God, talked to God, prayed, but it was nothing real substantial, nothing, not to the extent that I have now. I think when I went off to college is when me and God good for life, because I was battle tested. So back in, I would say, my sophomore year in college, I had practicing, and one of the players on my team caught me off a screen. 6'7" girl caught me off a screen, fell back, and I had to have back surgery. I had already had bad back issues, but this shifted some things, and I had to have back surgery. And I remember them telling me that you may not be able to play basketball again. Like, if the surgery goes wrong, not only will you may not be able to play, you could be paralyzed. And then also given the ultimatum of like, because the coaching staff at that time wasn't really rocking with me. They were saying that, we'll pay for your surgery. We'll pay for the rest of your schooling, actually, because I was a sophomore then. But you would have to sign like a medical release. And, there goes your basketball career. You can't play anymore. And I remember being told all this information at 19 years old and was like, yo, what am I doing? Like, why I'm going through this, God? I'm a good person. I do all the things I'm supposed to do. I do well in school. I'm a good daughter. I'm a good sister. Like, why is this happening to me? And I was in a huge depression. I didn't want to talk to my friends, didn't really want to talk to my family. I would try and hide it. But I was depressed, and I didn't know it at that time, but now looking back, I was. And I remember going to church in the morning and at night, like pressing my way to God in a way that I've never bro, we're gonna have to figure this out. Because I would go in the morning at a Baptist church, and then in the evening I'd walk to a Catholic church and just sit in the pews and just boo-hoo. And I walked during the practices, since I couldn't practice, I walked the stadium steps, and I just have conversations with God, bro, we're gonna have to figure this out. What am I gonna do? What are we gonna do? So I decided to leave the school that I was at and transfer to the HBCU that I ended up graduating from. And that was on a whim. I wasn't cleared to play, but I was trusting myself and trusting God, it's gonna happen. And it did. And I think remembering some of my lowest moments, the times that I questioned myself, when I felt by myself, God was there. So I think that really speaks to my spirituality, and where I'm at now is when stuff happens, God, come on, we're gonna have a conversation. When I was crying on my bathroom floor over something, and feeling God, where you at? I did everything right. Why we here? I can have those authentic, real, I'm mad at you, why would you do this kind of conversations, because I've been battle tested, and God is big enough to handle my anger, my fear, all of that. So we have real conversations. I think my spirituality is super tied, and it's tight to me.
That was wonderful.
I'm not wonderful. What about you?
No.
Can I ask questions too?
No. That's I think that's what makes you who you are at this point, right? It makes you. I always told you that I was proud of you because I've seen your growth over time, but what you've gone through is making you who you are. And I've always told you that you're going to be a mentor to some young girls coming up, and obviously that's already happening. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to see that you're growing in that way. It's beautiful because we never know why we go through some of these things. Ooh. We really don't. And we always hope that it's for a reason that makes sense to you. Because, you're going through it for a reason. But it's do I like the reason? Mm-hmm. And maybe it'll take you, a few years when you're coaching the next WNBA superstar. She's lifts up the championship, and she's I owe everything to Alesha Smith. It was because of her story, her testament, that I was able to get here. So those end up being some of the payoffs, man.
what got me was a few months back. I went to this mixer kind of Xavier. Shout out to Xavier. So because I went to again HBCU, Xavier was bringing together all of the incoming freshmen that got accepted into the school. They brought them and they were asking for alums to come speak. And these are folks that got accepted that are from New York. So I went. I think it was up in Harlem that I went up to. And got a chance to speak and share my story with a group of the incoming freshmen. And I remember one of the girls came up to me afterwards and was like, I'm so inspired by you. And she was just speaking about how I look so confident and like I want to be. I'm like, girl, me? Confident? For real?
Yeah.
Just giving me all of these this praise, and it was a full circle moment for me because I remember being 19 and praying like, God, if you get me through this moment, I promise you I will inspire somebody else like with the story. Like just get me through it and I will share the story. I will be, I will help somebody else. And for that little girl, not little girl, she was a young adult, to share with me that like she needed to hear that because she was struggling herself and was nervous about college and wanted to do this amazing things and not feeling prepared for it, and to be able to speak over her, it was amazing. And it was, again, a full circle moment. So I appreciate those mentorship moments on and off the court.
I wanted to take a quick little pivot. In doing research on you, that young lady that came up to you and said that you seem really confident, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen you as comfortable as I've seen you on a poetry stage.
Oh my gosh.
I listen, I watched a few of your performances.
Okay.
And what I remark is like there's an intensity in your eyes when you're giving the poetry that I don't see unless you're like passionately talking about something maybe. Mm-hmm. But like there's like a genuine like fire behind your eyes when you're talking about when you're giving your poetry. You speak with a lot of conviction. Like there's a lot of, you got a lot of bass in your voice when you start talking about these things.
Yeah.
And I don't think I even know like where the poetry started, like when you started doing poetry. But curious, when did you start it, and what does it do for you when you're on that stage giving those performances? Yeah,
I've always liked writing. It was my favorite thing, being able to write. I would go outside growing up and would just sit in the grass and write and write and write. Couldn't be in the grass in New York City because y'all had that.
Yeah, I was going in the grass.
In Georgia.
In somebody's lawn?
In my backyard. Yeah, we have yards. But yeah, I always love writing. And I don't know if I remember my first performance so much, but I remember, or I just, I get to be another version of myself. Writing has always been a place for me to escape, especially when life ain't going right, if basketball ain't going right. So, you have a terrible game. Sometimes you don't really want to just sit and shoot and shoot and shoot because I'm mad at you right now, basketball. Yeah. I need a chance to write. So I would sit and I would write. And it gave me another, I don't know, it gave me an outlet, but then also folks got to see me beyond just the basketball player. I never wanted to be the athlete. I never wanted to be the dumb athlete. Absolutely not. Yeah. But I didn't just want to be the athlete. And I would always, do poetry, sneak my way into like the poetry scene, perform and then leave. Like, please don't know me. But it was another way to like share who I am without a basketball in my hand. And I do say that when I'm performing, I definitely feel confident. And I get to share another side of me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which brings me to basketball.
Oh no, not basketball.
You just mentioned it. If you're confident when you're doing your poetry, because it's you by yourself writing, getting to share a thought that you had personally. When you're on the basketball court, it's you against it's you and your team versus 5 other people. I know you in the basketball sense being competitive, but were you always competitive? Like, period? Or was it just with basketball?
I could always hoop.
Yeah.
Being a competitive was something that grew. But like, I was a hooper. I could hoop. So I started off playing basketball by like out the womb. To be honest, I came from a basketball family, but playing on a team. Yeah. By like 4th, 5th grade, I was traveling to play basketball on AAU teams. So, you know, you got to have some sort of competitive spirit to like play and to be on those on that circuit. They call it the circuit. I don't know if there's a specific moment that just brought out my competitive spirit, but I do think that because I know I could hoop, but I also wanted to make sure folks know you're not better than me for real.
Were you interested in basketball naturally, or was it just around so you just started doing it?
Because it started so early, like I'm telling you, out the womb, I feel like I had a basketball that it may not have been naturally, but I naturally grew to love it. It was fun. I think the most fun moments on the basketball court for me is pickup. Like, there's nothing more beautiful than pickup basketball. Wow. I don't care about, like, you know, playing in college or in high school. That's cool. High school basketball was fun, I'm not gonna lie. But pickup basketball is so beautiful to me.
Why?
I don't know if it's the grit. I don't know if it's like the no rules. We playing, like, you got to be able to have some sort of IQ and to play off of each other. We don't need the plays. It's just poetry in motion.
No coaches, no nothing.
No coaches. You
hate coaches anyway, so that's why.
Exactly. We don't need coaches. No referees. You got to advocate for yourself. And sometimes, you know what? I'll take that foul. Go ahead. I'm not no punk. So you get a chance to prove yourselves. In a way that, you know, the more formalized basketball, you don't. So I think pickup basketball is a love that I always have, and I'm actually trying to get back to playing more of that.
As we near the end here, I do have one question for you. Before we get to the very last question, which I ask every guest. This question is, I think, maybe a question that I'm going to continue to ask you as we get older and as life happens. I've seen you through some the ebbs and flows of your life, right? I've seen you through. Why'd you laugh at that? Like,
because it's very true, and that was a very polished way of saying it.
I've seen you through a lot of the ebbs and flows. I met you when you first moved to New York, and
sounded like cornbread.
You had, I mean, if they think you were yeehaw now, man,
wow.
But you came into the nonprofit space like ready to take on the world, right? And through a lot of humbling experiences, through disheartening experiences, through great, like, liberating experiences, the ups and downs from nonprofit to, you know, moving on to different jobs, et cetera, personal stuff, et cetera. You've dealt with a lot, and you've grown. Even taking it back before nonprofit, like the story you just mentioned about the back surgery, and like having to work your way up to now you could hoop full contact, no issues, right? When you see who you are now, and I told you I'm going to ask you this question a few times. I've asked you this before. When you see what you've endured and you look at who you are now, do you say that you're proud of yourself?
Do I say it? No, not enough. But am I? I am. Yeah. I'm extremely proud of, having boohoo out here. I don't have time to be boohooing. No, but I really am very proud.
It's okay. This is the show to boohoo if you want to.
It's not. I'm not gonna be the first guest that boohoos. But I am very proud of myself and where I'm at. I think I told you a few months back, my cousin, we were having I stopped by his house and we were having a family dinner. And my aunt was asking me how my day went. I'm going down the list of everything that I've done. And she was like, yo, wow, that's all that, you did that today? I was like, yeah. And she was like, wow, when are you going to celebrate yourself? Did you celebrate yourself? And I remember my middle school cousin stopping and was like, she never does that. And that hit me, and it continues to hit me because I don't do that enough. I don't say I'm proud of myself enough. Though I am, I would never not do this for somebody else. I would never put the gas pump in somebody else. Why am I not gassing myself up? Why am I not celebrating myself enough? So I'm super proud of myself. I think if the 8-year-old Alesha met the 29-year-old Alesha, she would be in awe. Wanted to sit right next to her, hug on her, all of that. And that's what I'm proud of. I think because I honor the little girl, Alesha, I need to honor more of the 29-year-old right now in this moment person. So I'm doing more of that. Super proud of myself. Shout out to me. Give myself a hug. Very good. Give yourself a hug. Come on. We're going to hug ourselves. Hug yourself.
I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm glad that you said that on camera because now I can give this back to you as a clip.
Gosh.
I can give this back to you as a clip.
Okay.
Anytime you feel down, remember that you are proud of yourself.
Absolutely. And to hug yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to me.
Alesha, this has been beautiful. You dropped a lot of gems. I thought you were really open and honest. And I just have one last question for you as we wrap up here. It's a question that every guest gets as the last question, dating all the way back to the Tech Perspective podcast with Flatiron School. It is the question of Alesha Smith. What is a quote that you personally live by?
I'm going to mess this up because I cannot remember. When I give it, I'm going to look it up later who it was, and you got to put it in the comments.
Sure.
But there's this quote about, it was from a book, and the character was asking the person, are you sure you want to be well? Because wellness is no trifling matter. It's a lot required of you if you want to be well. And I look back and I think about that quote a lot because on my own wellness, self-care, being a good person journey is it's going to take wellness, being well, being whole, being a good human being. It's not easy. Are you sure? You sure you want to be well? It takes effort. So I think that's one quote that often pops up into my mind when I don't want to go to the gym. Are you sure you want to be well? When you don't want to go to work, are you how badly do you want to be well in the world to be well? It's something that I go back to often. I wish I remember the name. It's gonna bother me, but it was from a book.
It was dope though.
Yes.
You recalled it well.
Thank you.
Alesha Smith. Visionaries only.
Visionaries only.